I caught my wife Sophia red-handed, her secret affair exposed in a whirlwind of betrayal that led to a cross-country chase, unexpected alliances, and a plot twist you won't see coming. Subscribe now for more pulse-pounding tales of infidelity that'll have you glued to your screen. I couldn't stand the gatherings at the county club every few weeks. It seemed like they had countless excuses for some frivolous party, so a bunch of wealthy people could get together and flaunt their egos. My wife, Sophia, this incredible wife, loved attending these events and always looked forward to them. Unfortunately, in the last few months she'd been drinking excessively and sometimes ended up embarrassing herself and me. Sophia and I had been married for 18 years. We had 2 kids, both in high school. I met my wife while getting my MBA and we hit it off immediately. Things started cooling down between us about 8 years ago and I assumed it was natural. I would have appreciated more affection and intimacy, but I hated to push it. I pretty much resigned myself to the fact that the rest of my life would be less than romantic. I had a decent job and made good money. Putting 2 kids through high school took a big chunk out of the budget and savings, but we were still well off. Sophia didn't have to work and didn't want to. Her time was spent doing community work and social activities. My income was necessary to support that. She still looked good for her age thanks to frequent trips to the spa and beauty salon. I was average, with a bit of a belly and some gray at the temples. I dressed well because of my job and Sophia's love of shopping. I was good at my job, but not really happy. I was ready to try something new, something I'd enjoy without worrying about the pay. I also wanted to move somewhere else. The house was too large for just the 2 of us and I hated the cost and time involved in maintaining it. Sophia wouldn't even consider discussing such ideas. She wanted her big house, county club, and wealthy friends at one such gathering. I wandered around the club, joining in small conversations about trivial things. The night was getting old and I'd been nursing my last drink for an hour or so. Sophia, on the other hand, was just getting started. It appeared that she had been drinking more than usual and it showed 8 or 10 of the local socialites were sitting together chatting away. As I walked up, the conversation seemed to be about sex. That was my cue to leave. As I turned to exit, I heard Sophia's loud voice, "Hell, if it weren't for Dave Turner, I wouldn't have had any good sex in my life." The group grew suddenly quiet. Some of the ladies noticed me standing nearby, sensing the lack of laughter. Sophia turned and saw me. The excess alcohol was definitely affecting her judgment. "Michael, I didn't know you were standing there. You weren't supposed to hear that." "Dear, I'm sorry, but them shows. My bad." She followed up with a few drunken giggles, like a little girl. The ladies nearby didn't know how to react. Some walked away quietly and the rest just sat there in silence. Sophia looked at me with a silly smirk, as if she had done something mischievous. I placed my glass on a nearby table and slowly left the room in the club. I didn't go home. Instead, I headed to the airport and 30 minutes later was on a commuter flight to Tucson. I like Tucson far more than Phoenix. My relationship with Sophia now became a lot clearer. I understood things that had previously eluded me. A weekend in Tucson would help clarify a few more things. I turned off my cell phone. I had no trouble getting a room at one of the casinos. I opened an account for one. 0 in the comp room. An interesting thing about casino accounts. Since they are not banks, they are not under federal regulations and no reports are required to the government. If you win big bucks on a slot or keno, It must be reported. But anything you deposit in your account is not traceable. I wasn't really interested in gambling, but, like the banking setup, by the time I woke up it was noon on Sunday. I was analyzing my situation over a burger and fries. I liked Tucson. The climate was comfortable due to the high altitude. Because of the gaming, there were many other reasonably priced services available nearby. I took a walk by the river to pay my respects to all the broken marriages. I wasn't planning on a Tucson divorce, but might like to add my ring to the riverbed later. Returning to the hotel casino, I passed a real estate office with lots of pictures in the front display window. Suddenly a condo in Tucson started to make sense. After an hour in the office and 2 hours driving around, I found a small furnished unit that I really liked. The trouble was I couldn't buy it while I was married. Luckily, I managed to arrange a discreet lease-to-buy agreement with a large deposit. The deposit was my idea and the seller loved it. One of the best decisions I made early in my marriage was to manage and control the family finances myself. Sophia didn't have a knack for figures or banking. She was happy to let me pay the bills as long as she could spend the money. I treated myself to a beautiful sushi dinner that evening. Before going to bed, I deposited another €5 from my credit card into the casino fund. I hated paying the cash advance fee, but it was worth it in this case. I was up bright and early the next morning and managed to catch breakfast at the casino restaurant. Eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast hit the spot. While killing time with my second cup of coffee, I noticed my waitress had a big shiner. She tried to hide by combing her hair forward, but it wasn't working. She was a nick-looking woman in her early 40s. I watched her move from table to table, doing her best to keep everyone happy. I got the feeling this was new to her because she was trying too hard. An experienced waitress would have been smoother and more confident. She seemed determined to do a good job and I admired that. Your name tag says Donna. Is that your real name? No, my name is Diana, but Donna was the closest tag they had. Well, Diana, I'll have one more cup of coffee and promise to leave a big tip. If you tell me about the black eye, why don't I pour you a refill and you can leave a smaller tip and I'll ignore your question. Fair enough. It was rude of me to pry. I already had the key to the condo, so I decided to get a few things to set up housekeeping. First stop was down the street at the local used car lot. I grabbed a Civic sedan with more miles on it than I'd care to mention. It wouldn't be great for long trips, but was okay for running around. I could have rented, but I planned on coming back regularly for a while for a couple $100. I got all I needed to live comfortably, including a few changes of clothes. The rest of the day was spent opening accounts at several casinos. I wrote checks made out to each place, deposited the money and it disappeared. No audit trail. By the end of the day, I had deposited for points euro at for different casinos. I got a small spiral notebook to carry in my pocket and record the amounts, dates and casino names. This was a chronological record of the money I lost gambling over the weekend. Of course I hadn't lost a dime, but who was going to challenge me? Everyone knew I was a lousy poker player, so any losses at roulette, craps or blackjack would be believable. I had 6 months to come up with the down payment for the condo. That shouldn't be a problem. I totally forgot about lunch, so by the time dinner rolled around, I was starving. The easiest place to go was where I had breakfast. As luck would have it, Diana was my waitress. Why are you still here? Looks like a long day. I have to work double shifts to get by. I didn't think rent would be so high here. Want something to drink?" It was better not to be too nosy. I ordered my meal and tried to be a good boy for the rest of the time. When I finished, she brought my check and stopped for a moment. "I'm sorry for being short with you this morning. I'm having a hard time adjusting here and I'm a little self-conscious about the eye. It was a parting gift from my husband when I told him I was coming here to get a divorce. It's not the first one, but I hope it will be the last. Thanks for the nice dip at breakfast. It helps." She smiled as she walked away, but it was a sad smile. I thought about her the rest of the night. That night I concluded there wasn't much more I could do right away. I had to get home to take care of a few things before setting up anything else here. I had no trouble getting a flight lined up for the return trip but wasn't sure what to do when I got there. Diana was working the next morning and I managed to get one of her tables. I stopped her when she dropped off the check after the meal. "I have a small problem and was wondering if you could help me out. I have to leave today and won't be back for a week or so. I need someone to house it. For me, it's a 2-bedroom condo, so you wouldn't have to worry about any conflicts. Could you possibly help me out? It will be for at least a couple of months. Are you serious? No strings attached. I hate to leave the place alone 90 of the time. It will be just you, and when I'm here I'll stay out of your way. Promise." I didn't care if someone broke in and cleaned the place out. There wasn't much to lose, but I couldn't let Diana know that. "Okay. Is it within walking distance of the diner?" "It's closed, but I'm leaving you my car. Also make sure it always has gas. For when I come back I'll call you ahead of time." There's a machine on the phone. Diana just stood there looking at me. I think she was afraid it was a setup. I didn't have time to convince her otherwise. "Here's the condo key and the car key. The car is parked at the condo. It's a dark GRY Honda Civic. Here is the address for the condo. If you don't feel comfortable about it, don't go. I'll pick up the keys when I come back next Friday." I wrote the address on a napkin and handed it to her. She took the napkin and keys, just staring at me. "Diana, don't worry about it. If you do, it's fine. If you decide not to, it's still fine." An hour later, I was on my flight home. I would have rather stayed in Tucson. After picking up my car at the long-term lot, I drove by the house. Sophia's car was gone, so I decided to get a few things for the rest of the week. I loaded the car with underwear, clothes, hose, shoes and my laptop. It took less than 10 minutes. I also grabbed my passport and birth certificate. The company had several kitchenette-type units on consignment. My position authorized me to use one of them as I saw fit. I reserved it for the next 2 weeks. I put the laptop battery on the charger and then called my eldest daughter, Emily. I told her that her mother and I were having some domestic problems and I'd be tied up for a while. I asked her to explain it to her brother and tell him not to worry. Both of them were at Western University. I got a group discount but still had to pay out-of-state tuition. At least I could afford it. I hung up, put the cell phone on a charger and hit the shower. The only thing I got to eat on the plane was a bag of pretzels. I was looking forward to a nice dinner. Monday was a busy day. Before doing anything else, I went to the bank and got a second mortgage on the house, a big one. I now owed more on the house than it was worth by the end of this month. That would change. I contacted Western directly from the bank and we reached an agreement on prepaid tuition for the kids. The bank wired 18.0 directly to the school. That left me with a cashier check for just over 15. Zero to take to Tucson. I cashed into CDs, paid the penalty and closed out the money market account. I decided to leave the credit cards alone until the end of the month. By that time I was late for work. My faithful secretary, Linda, was waiting with black coffee and a silly grin morning. "Mr. Morgan, are you going to tell me about what happened at the county club Friday, or am I going to have to believe all the rumors?" "Linda, the rumor all true. Anything else you need to know?" Without blinking an eye, she responded, "What do you want me to do to help?" "Give me everything you can." On Dave Turner, I think he used to work here, but I'm not sure, arranged to have all my scheduled work done by some of the staff and don't give them a reason why any appointments or meetings I have set up should be shifted. Any questions so far? I got a big smile and a thumbs up from Linda as she left the office. I had originally figured it would take several weeks to arrange my affairs, but now I saw it could all be done in a week. I called my lawyer and arranged an immediate appointment. On the way out, I informed Linda that I was not taking or responding to any calls from my wife. Security was not to allow her in the building. Mark Peterson was a friend of mine from college. We liked each other, but Mark never did. Like Sophia, I figured he would be the perfect guy to handle my divorce. I was at the country club Friday, Michael, so I think I know why you're here. You're right. I'm not being a smart aleck, Michael, but it's about time you're right again. I figured as long as I wasn't being publicly humiliated, I could stand it. That ended Friday. I need access to all of your accounts and a couple of powers of attorney. I'll have my assistant prepare everything and then give you a call. Anything special I should be aware of? Well, Mark, I'm afraid the trauma of what happened Friday triggered something in me. I find that I've become addicted to gambling. I spent the weekend in Tucson and lost thousands of dollars. I'm going back next weekend and I'm afraid it will be worse. Gee, good buddy, that is terrible. I assume you're keeping some kind of record or documentation of all these losses. Mark had a big smile on his face. I have, and I will. I guess it would be a good idea if I send you copies of everything. Most definitely. You know, Michael, I don't think we should talk about this anymore. Do you? You're right. Do you need anything else? I'm good. Michael, get out of here and take care of business. Take this financial worksheet with you. Fill it out and bring it back when you come in to sign those forms tomorrow. I got your back, buddy. It was about that time I realized I missed lunch. Linda had a nice little sheet waiting for me with information about Dave Turner. She recommended I speak to Janet Klein in the personnel department before doing anything else. Jan had been with the company forever. She ran a tight ship and did a good job. She always wore a business suit and always had her hair in a tight bun. Her confidence made her a little intimidating to anyone who met her. If Linda wanted me to see her, it must be important afternoon. "Mr. Morgan, have a seat." She was trying to put me at ease, but it wasn't working. It was like being in a room with a nuntia. I was a grown man in an important position and I was in awe of this woman. She shut her office door. Linda gave me a rundown of what's going on. I don't contribute to office gossip, but I do deal in facts. Dave Turner came to me in confidence 3 years ago. I swore I wouldn't tell anyone what was discussed at that time. But it appears I cannot keep that promise. If at any time you're offended by something, I say please get up and leave and our discussion will be over. If you don't like what you hear, don't get mad at me. I'm just giving you the facts. Do you understand, Mr. Morgan? Yes, I understand. I think I'm mature enough to accept whatever you tell me. Without throwing a temper tantrum, she frowned slightly at my attempt at humor. About 3 years ago, your wife, Sophia, approached Dave Turner at a company function. Drinking was heavy that night, and before the evening was over, Dave and Sophia were having sex in one of the private offices. Dave was going to get married the next month. Sophia threatened to tell his fiancée Grace unless he continued to meet her for sex. He hoped that after he got married she'd leave him alone, but she didn't. She forced him to have sex with her for several months under the threat of exposure. In desperation, he came to me for help. Of course, he had to tell me the whole story. Naturally, I couldn't in good conscience tell you or anyone else. The best solution I had was to transfer Dave to another office. After his relocation to Houston, Sophia left him alone. Dave never told his wife about the problem any questions. It looks like Mr. Turner was as big a victim in this fiasco as I was. I was contemplating some type of retribution, but that seems foolish. Now, any recommendations? Miss Klein, now that you know you have the power, I think you should let it die. Dave Turner is a good employee and an asset to the company. Don't ruin him over something your wife did. Thanks for your time. I think you're right. Being forced to have sex with my wife is punishment enough. As we stood, Janet smiled. By the way, it's not Miss. I've been married for 28 years. It was hard to imagine Janet Klein in bed with a man. Maybe when she lets her hair down she turns into some kind of sex goddess. I suddenly found myself thinking of a dominatrix and decided to change the subject mentally. I had more important things to worry about than Janet's love life. Linda had rescheduled all my work, giving me a clean slate. My wife called 3 times, refusing to believe I was in San Diego. Linda set up an appointment for me with the company president the next day and one with the legal department that afternoon. I asked Linda to have dinner with me. She laughed and said her husband would disapprove. She suggested I asked Janet and laughed again. It took longer in the legal department than anticipated, and I kept a few people over time. I apologized, but they all seemed to understand it turned out to be more complicated than expected. Redeeming my retirement plan for a cash settlement was difficult. Closing out the 401k and shared savings account went smoothly but took time. Cashing in my sick time, vacation time, and company insurance was easier. By then it was apparent that I was leaving the company. I hoped it wouldn't leak back to my wife. Before I was done, I ended up eating dinner alone. For some reason I thought about Diana. During the meal I wondered if she moved into the condo and if she was still working a double shift. Although I hardly knew her, I was anxious to get back to Tucson and see her. It seemed juvenile and I tried to put it out of my mind. It was foolish to waste time on fantasies that would never be. The next morning I cashed into whole life insurance policies and canceled the term policies. I was amazed at the cash value the whole life policies had grown to. I could pick up the checks the next morning. My car was covered by the company insurance, but I could owe the insurance on Sophia's BMW. The lease was in her name, but the insurance was in mine. Before going into work, I stopped by Mark's office, dropped off the financial form and signed a bunch of papers his assistant had ready. Linda had coffee ready when I got back to the office. It's not my intention to rub salt into your wounds, boss, but you need to talk to Paul Anderson down in settlements before you see Richard. Richard Harris was the president of the company. I felt pretty sure he already knew what I wanted to see him about. The settlements division was in the basement, to be exact. I don't know why everyone else got windows and sunlight while they got the dungeon. Paul Linda said you wanted to talk to me. Paul Anderson was a quiet guy who always got his work done. He was not on sense, dull but efficient. He steered me over to a private corner. I heard things were coming to a head in your office. I don't do gossip, but I felt you needed to know something about. 6 years ago we had a guy named James Bartlett. He was an okay guy, married with 2 kids. He got involved with your wife after an office party. She kept calling him at home and here in the office. He knew he made a mistake and wanted to end it, but she wouldn't let him. She threatened to tell his wife if he tried to dump her. The dumb guy called her bluff. 2 days later, James's wife kicked him out. He started drinking and lost his job. I don't know where he is now. Anyway, James' wife threatened to tell you about your wife's affair. As I understand it, your wife gave her 10 grand to shut up. I have no proof about that last part. Thanks, Paul. I wonder if anybody else has some good news for me. I wasn't trying to upset you, Mr. Morgan, but Linda said I should tell you did the right thing. I appreciate it. I took the elevator straight up to the 9th floor. I was a little eager for my appointment with Mr. Harris, but he took me right in. It was short and precise. The legal department, personnel department, and payroll would take care of everything for me. When the smoke settled, I was to call him personally from wherever I was. He gave me a card with his private cell number on the back. There were no promises, no regrets, and no nonsense. Although things were wrapped up on one hand, they were kept open. On the other, I gave him a simple nod and left. I hadn't spoken a word. Linda was all smiles. When I got back to the office, she handed me the usual cup of coffee. I smiled back and said, "Get me a flight to Tucson for Thursday morning with a 2-hour layover in Houston." She motioned with her head for me to look out the window. Sophia was down in the parking lot arguing with a security guard. She's been down there for over 20 minutes. They won't let her in and she won't leave. What do you want to do? Boss, looks like the guards have everything under control. The only problem I have is finding somebody to have dinner with. I hate eating alone. I called Mark to see how things were going. He said he couldn't do anything until I straightened out the financial mess. I had to show him that I had no money. Right now, I was loaded between the checks I had, those that were coming in the cash in the bank. I was a wealthy man. I promised I would go to Tucson early and not come back until I was flat broke. Every once in a while somebody would stick their head in the door and tell me that my wife wanted me to call her. She had all her friends call their husbands at work to find me. I hung around the office for a few more hours cleaning things up, so it would be easier for my replacement. Sophia was sitting on the hood of my car waiting for me to come out. Linda smiled and handed me the keys to her Honda Accord. She said it was a good excuse to get her hubby to pick her up and take her out for dinner. By the way, you're not going to do anything stupid in Houston, or just tying up some loose ends. No vengeance, I promise. I drove to Greenwood and had my dinner at the Outback. I was back in my apartment before midnight. The next morning went fast. I signed more papers for Mark, closed all the bank accounts and canceled all the credit cards. I even arranged to have all the utilities turned off at the house. The next week I picked up checks at the bank insurance company and work. I had no idea I was worth so much money. I got a new cell phone and canceled the ones that Sophia and I had. I sold my county club membership to an old friend for 1.0. My replacement was in place when I stopped in at work for the last time. He seemed like a nice guy. He came from Boston with 24 hours notice. He knew it was a good move for him. Linda knew more about running the office than I did, so it was unnecessary for me to train him. There were some things at the house I wished I had, but they weren't important enough for me to go back for. Linda told me to keep her car and she would have her husband pick it up at the airport. I had to get a couple of cheap suitcases to put my stuff in at the apartment, anything I forgot I could buy in Tucson. All of a sudden I realized that I had done everything I could do. All my assets were now in cash. There were no stocks, no accounts, and nothing else of value except the house which I was giving to my wife. AirBlue was accommodating. They had some seats available and were more than willing to move my flight up. I called Mark at home. "Hey buddy, just wanted to let you know I'm cutting out tonight. I assume you have everything you need." "I'm good, Michael. I can serve the papers tomorrow, but I still need that financial information as soon as possible. You might as well go ahead and give them to her. I'll start sending you some proof of financial irresponsibility as soon as I can be careful. Michael, I don't want to see either one of us get into trouble. I'm sure Sophia will get a big shot lawyer to help her, probably from Dallas. Of course. He'll be on contingency and could be on her as soon as things start to look bad. It's all up to you, Mark. Do the best you can for me. Just don't pad the bill too much. I'm going to be a very poor man soon. Don't forget that. One more thing, see if you can locate a guy named James Bartlett. There's a good chance he could use a little help, depending on the circumstances. I might be the one to do that. Got it, Michael? Have a good flight and keep in touch." I called the condo and left a message on the machine that I would be arriving later that night. I told Diana I would call and didn't want her to be alarmed. When she heard someone at the door at this point, I didn't know if she'd be there or not. I could hope. It was odd that I didn't even know this woman, and yet I was hoping to have a relationship of some sort with her. At this point, just having her as a friend would be fine. Her situation made her vulnerable, and I didn't want to seem like I was taking advantage of it. I arrived in Houston early enough to have a comfortable breakfast. I was waiting in Dave Turner's office. When he came in, I could tell he wasn't happy to see me. "Mr. Morgan, I'd like to say it's nice to see you, but I wouldn't be telling the truth. I think we both know that. Relax, Dave. I hope you don't mind my being a little familiar. I'm not here to bust your chops. I just wanted to let you know that I understand the situation you were in a while back and that there are no hard feelings. You could have done that on the phone. I know, but it was on my way and I felt it was worth my time to clear the air. I don't understand why would you want to do this. I'm the one who screwed up. I should be apologizing to you for what happened. You didn't do a damn thing wrong. I was young and foolish and made a terrible mistake. To this day, I'm too ashamed to even tell my wife you were partially to blame for what happened, Dave, but I feel that most of the problem was caused by my wife. What she did created problems for you and now for me. I'm not saying that you were completely innocent, but it wasn't entirely your fault. I don't want you to carry around any more guilt than you have to, because my loving wife was a... That's very generous of you to say that I don't know what to say or what to do. In return, I reached over and handed him one of Mark's cards later today. Give my lawyer a call. There's a possibility he might ask you to do something for me. It will be very discreet. He might say that he needs nothing at this time. At most, I expect he'll Ask for a notarized statement confirming the affair. I promise it will not get back to your wife. I got up and we shook hands. It felt odd, since this was one of the men who CU'd me, but I thought it was appropriate. Dave Turner was a fine man and didn't deserve to have his life compromised for one indiscretion, even though it happened several times. An hour later, I was back on my flight to Tucson. I was trying to figure out what I did wrong. I worked hard to provide my wife and children with everything they could want or need. I think I did a pretty good job. It seems that while I was making sure everyone was taken care of, I was neglecting my wife. When faced with problems like this, we all try to determine why it happened. In my case, I usually figure out that I was somehow to blame. I can accept that, but as the circle comes around, I'm forced to confront Sophia's attempts to make a cuckold out of me, which cannot be accepted or condoned. If she had been discreet, I probably would have let it all slide and forever blame myself. She wasn't discreet and I will not blame myself. The evening ended on a high note. When I landed at Tucson International, I was pleasantly surprised to see Diana waiting at the baggage pickup. She wore jeans and a light blue shirt. It was the first time I'd seen her in anything other than a uniform. I didn't intend for her to pick me up when I called. I simply wanted her to know I was arriving evening. Diana, I wasn't expecting you. I figured since I had your car, it was the least I could do. You're not working. No, I was able to cut back because of your generous offer. Oh, I wasn't being generous. I was just trying to figure out a way I could be alone with you. And just what are you going to do to me when you get me alone? I don't know. Yet I haven't planned that far ahead. Any suggestions? As I pulled my bags off the turntable, I noticed Diana blush a little. I figured it was time to back off. Before I scared her away, I felt she was baiting me a little when she asked the question, which was a good sign. 30 minutes later, we were back at the newly decorated apartment. It was just little touches that didn't cost much but made a difference in the ambience of the whole place. To thank her for fixing up the apartment and picking me up at the airport, I sprang for the prime rib dinners. I think Diana enjoyed the wine more than the beef. How's the divorce coming? Not worth a damn. I still have 3 weeks to go before I can apply. You need 6 weeks to establish residency. From what everybody said, I thought this would be a piece of cake. I think I would have been better off doing this from home. Why didn't you? Diana sat for a while, played with her food and then looked up. Getting away from Tim was more important than getting the divorce. The divorce is just a piece of paper that won't protect me from any more beatings. I think I used the divorce idea as a way to escape. It didn't matter where I went. The important thing was that I went at all. What Diana said made sense to me. I guess getting divorced from Sophia seemed important at first, but now I wasn't sure. All I wanted to do was keep her from profiting from the marriage. Unless I was planning on getting married again, it didn't matter. I had no inclinations that way. The rest of the evening was spent chatting about more mundane things like hobbies, movies, and books. Diana didn't have any children. I didn't ask why we slept in our separate bedrooms that night. Diana had left for work before I even got up. There was fresh coffee, and that was all I needed. I was still full from last night's feast. After a quick shower, I got down to business. Mark, how's my favorite lawyer? There was a sigh on the other end of the phone. Not worth a damn. Michael, I got bad news. For you, promise you won't shoot the messenger. Oh crap. I've only been gone 1 day. What the hell happened? Sophia has stirred up the pot. She found out about the bank accounts and other stuff. After calling the police, she got a restraining order against everything in the world. All of your accounts are frozen, even though they are empty. You can't come near her or the house. You cannot take anything from the house. You cannot contact your children, even though they are legally adults. Most of the stuff is crap, but it will take a ton of time and money to straighten it all out, if you want to. She contacted the SEC about your 401k and retirement accounts. Somehow she is the IRS looking into things. Mark, I don't know how to tell you this, but I don't want any part of it. I'm out. Do you understand? I was a bit over WL mad. I guess you mean you won't be handling the divorce for me. You got it, buddy, for your information. She also hired a private detective to track you down. I wonder how she is going to pay for all of this. Don't know and don't care. Remember, if the cops or feds ask me where you are, I'll have to tell them I'm not going to risk my career for you, even though we are friends. I understand. Mark, cover your ass. I'm going to make some adjustments on my end. I won't call you again for a while. Thanks for your understanding, buddy. I was hoping you would see you well. That put a crimp in things. The best laid plans can go to hell in a heartbeat. I had to go to plan B and I didn't have one. My brilliant idea to fake losing all my money in the casinos was shot down. I decided not to call anyone else. Diana left me the car, which I appreciated. I don't know how she got to work. I was stuck with a small duffel full of money and checks. I had to go to 6 different casinos to cash all my checks for chips or credit. I was afraid to go to the banks in case there had been a hold or trace put on anything. The casinos were more than happy to help out. By the end of the morning, I had everything on deposit at several places and a bag full of cash and chips. After a quick lunch, I started the withdrawals. In 2 hours, all the chips had been converted to cash and all the cash had been removed from the casino accounts. I now had a big bag of money and lots of it. So far there had been no problems and nothing suspicious. It took less than an hour to drive to Carson City. I rented a large safety deposit box at an obscure little bank and stashed everything except $30, which I kept for walking around money. I felt relieved. Now that everything was safe, I was looking forward to another long dinner with Diana to celebrate. I knew something was fishy. As soon as I entered the condo, Diana was trying her best to straighten things out that should not have been messed up in the first place. She looked up at me and immediately covered part of her face. I'm sorry, Michael. It's my fault. I don't know how he found me and didn't know he was following me until I got into the apartment. I should have been more careful. I'm really sorry. I slowly lowered her hand away from her face. Diana had a new shiner and a fat lip to go with it. A large bluish bruise covered the right side of her face. Was it Tim? She nodded her head. He had his 2 brothers with him. They're out looking for you now. Tim told me not to leave the condo. Where are they looking? I gave them the names of 3 casinos. The idiots don't even know what you look like. I don't think they're thinking straight. It was a no-brainer. We couldn't stay and we couldn't call the cops. We left everything, started driving west and spent the night in a small off-road motel in Grass Valley. It only had 1 bed, but I was a gentleman. I brought some takeout back to the room and got some makeup for Diana. She tried her best to cover up the bruises, but it still looked bad. She kept apologizing to me all night. I was relieved when she finally fell asleep. We drove into Sacramento the next day and got some clothing and personal items. I had no idea when we'd be able to get back to the condo. I had the Grass Valley Motel for 2 more nights. Diana and I spent the next few days getting to know each other. There was no sex and no innuendos. I felt more comfortable with her after 3 days than I did with my wife. After 18 years, when I wasn't talking with Diana, I was worrying about all the other things that were happening. I was afraid to take Diana back to the condo in case Tim would find her. I was afraid to go back to the condo myself in case somebody was looking for me. But I carelessly left my laptop, passport and other personal papers there. I had a stupid idea that they were important to me and I had to get them real stupid. I only knew Diana a few days, but I decided I had to trust her. We were both in the same boat as far as spouses were concerned. Have you been to Mexico? No, are we going to go to Mexico? Michael, I don't know. Look in case things don't go well. I want you to do something for me. I don't want you to get in trouble and I want to keep you away from Tim. Michael, you don't tell me anything. You've done more than enough already. I'll be fine. Well, I'm not sure how things are going to go for me. I have a lot of money sent away. It's not dirty money, but I'm hiding it from my wife. If something happens to me, you will have to retrieve the cash from me. Who is after? You haven't said anything about that. Did you do something illegal? Look. Several federal agencies are looking for me and a private detective. I'm sure the local police will be called in to help if necessary. All I'm trying to do is hide some money from my wife. She's trying to make it look like I'm doing something illegal. What am I supposed to do with this money? I was thinking about that. Go to Guadalajara and wait for me. Use whatever money you need to get by until I get there. How will you find me? Go to the Liberty Market for coffee every morning. I will find you. It's very large, but I will find you. When am I supposed to do this? When you figure out I'm in trouble. Why don't I just do it now? Be patient. I'll take you with me. I'd rather take you with me than go separately. I'd feel better if we went together. Why can't we both go now? The conversation was starting to get redundant, so I ignored her. I didn't mean to be impolite, just anxious to move along. 2 hours later we were over the pass and in Carson City. Doris' name was put on the access for the safety deposit box and she got her own key. When we got back to the condo, I parked half a block away. The complex had a lower level parking area under the units. It was open to the outside but covered. I told Diana to wait in the car until I was sure there wouldn't be a problem. What sort of problem? I had no idea the way things were going lately. Anything could happen, and it did. I was walking through the parking area looking for anything suspicious. When it happened, Michael Morgan turned around. He was a little man, sort of weary. The long leather coat he wore made him look weird instead of sinister. He wasn't menacing enough to pull it off. The large black automatic in his fist was, though, do I know you? A big smile crossed his face, as if he was proud to identify himself. My name is LLO. Your wife sent me. Okay, with incredible wife. Okay, what can I do for you? I need your wedding ring in your wallet. I can understand the wedding ring, but why the wallet? I have to make this look like a robbery. Make what look like a robbery? Your wife hired me to kill you. Mr. Morgan. I hope she paid you up front because she doesn't have any money. What do you mean? That was the end of the conversation. From across the parking area came 3 large Italians who did look nasty in their long leather coats. Michael Morgan, we want to talk to you. Tim was one loud dude. The intrusion caught LO by surprise eyes. He turned to face the three of them. When one of them noticed the gun in his hand, all three of them were reaching into their coats. As I dove across the concrete barrier leading to the outside of the parking area, LLO lost all interest in me for the moment. As I scooted along the side of the building toward the car, I could hear shots echoing off the garage walls. I looked up in time to see Diana speeding down the street and two guys in suits getting out of a black SUV across the street. It was obvious that the suit guys were feds and I assumed they were waiting for me. The firefight distracted them long enough for me to get out of the area. Door was gone. The car was gone. There was no way in hell that I was going back to that condo. I didn't know who shot whom in the parking garage and I didn't want to know. All I knew for sure was that there were 3 different groups after me for different reasons. At the same time, I got the message. I had several options at this point. One was to catch a bus to Carson City and get my money. I decided against this idea since I was too hot. Yeah, hot, that's a good word. I was just trying to get away from a cheating wife. What the hell happened? Since I decided to let the money cool for a while, I had to find a place to lay low. I still had over €4 in my pocket. That would hold me for a while. Why was my wife trying to kill me? I guess she didn't realize there was no longer any insurance money. I figured she was smarter than that. I checked in with the kids and everything was fine. They felt better after they found out the tuition had been prepaid. They wanted to know what happened between Sophia and me, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them some things would have to wait. I borrowed a car and drove up to Carson City. The safety deposit box was empty. At least she could have left a note. I couldn't really complain because I gave her the key and access to the box. Did she go to Guadalajara or did she find a place where I couldn't find her? There was only one way to find out. There were several small travel agencies in my San Francisco neighborhood. Most of them specialized in group tours for compatible people, which I didn't quite fit into. I finally found a tour to my favorite Mexican city with a last-minute cancellation that I could qualify for. It was the first time in my life that I had to scrape together enough money for something. The trip wasn't that expensive. I just didn't have a lot of money. I felt comfortable because a few of the guys on the trip worked at the restaurant with me. Most of them had signed up for the side trips, but I had other plans. The first 2 days turned out to be a big disappointment. The Liberty Market was bigger than I had imagined. I see now that it was a poor choice on my part. I hated to think that maybe Diana had decided to take my money and go someplace a little more exotic. Maybe she was in Bangkok or Tahiti. Lord knows, there was enough money in that safety deposit box to live just about anywhere she wanted to. I didn't know if I should sit and wait for her to walk by or if I should walk around and look for her. I ended up doing both by the 3rd day. It was getting dull. It's about time, Michael. Where the hell have you been? I turned and saw Diana standing with her hands on her hips. She had on a wide-brimmed straw hat with a red band around it. Say something, damn it. I've been going nuts here. Not knowing if you were even alive or not, I didn't say anything. I walked over and kissed her for the first time. I don't know why I hadn't done it before, but I was glad I did it now. That's a pretty pathetic explanation. Maybe you better try it again. The second kiss was accompanied by a big hug as I swung her around off the ground. Diana, I missed you so bad. You still have to tell me where you were for the last month. But I can't wait until later. Let's go home and have some lunch. We walked through the market hand in and I felt happy and content for the first time in a while. Michael, don't get mad at me, but I spent some of your money. I put most of it in the bank, but I needed a place to live, so I bought us a house. I was hoping you wouldn't mind, because you had an awful lot of money in that bank. It was a beautiful hacienda in a beautiful city, and I was with a wonderful woman. I like it when a plan comes together. Sophia's parents were able to raise her bail money and pay for her lawyers. Mark had no trouble getting her signature on the divorce papers. She ended up getting 5 to 8 years for trying to have me killed. Never did find out why Dave Turner gave Mark a deposition, but Mark never had to use it. Mark was able to find James Bartlett. He was sober but not doing well. When Mark asked him what he could do to help, James said he would like to have a hot dog push card. I got to feel better for $2,400. I settled my beef with the IRS for $40. LL went to jail in Nevada with Diana's husband and brothers. We don't know how long they will be there. I was now free to return home. My old job with a promotion was waiting for me. The law was no longer looking for me. As soon as Dora's Mexican divorce is final, we plan to get married. The kids will be coming down for the wedding during spring break. The house in Guadalajara is beautiful, though we are pretty certain we will not stay there full-time. Diana wants to keep it as a vacation home. Linda is anxious for me to return to work, especially in the new position. It's a promotion for both of us. Diana is willing to go anywhere as long as we stay together. She wants me to take her to meet Sophia. That should be interesting. My plans did not work out as I expected, but who am I to complain? Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and bookmark. We will provide you with more high-quality audio videos on the topic of infidelity.